Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TLD Cast. It's Monday. Hope you guys survived the weekend. Hope you guys had a super fun weekend. I'm getting a lot of echo on my end, so I'm going to have to mute that. Yeah, I hope you guys made it through the weekend. Hope you didn't have to work too hard to catch up from last week, but we're super excited to be back with you today for TLD Cast. We are the training, learning, and development community. We like to hang out every morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. UK time, just to talk shop. A bunch of professionals doing the work of training, learning, and development, hanging out together and talking about the things that we can do to get better at the work that we do so that we can help others get better at the work that they do in all of the different ways that we do that. So I look forward to our conversation today as well. We have a fantastic guest with us from across the pond. So we do have an international audience, which is kind of fun. Good to see Joe Cook here. Speaking of international, good to see you, Joe. And producer Craig, thanks for helping me out today and for hanging out in the chat. Jack, good to see you as well. Kim, everybody dropping into the chat. Alan, Taruna, Christopher, just scrolling through, making sure I give a quick shout out to everybody. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out with us today. Hey, don't forget to join us in the chat room here, but also TLD Chat, which is a Slack group. If you're not familiar with Slack, just let somebody here know and we can walk you through it and show you how to do it. There's a bunch of channels in Slack that are focused on different areas of conversations, and that conversation happens 24/7. We're just here for an hour this morning live on Crowdcast, but we can go and hang out in Slack on TLD Chat whenever we want to, 24/7. You can ask questions, answer questions, get connected, share jobs if you're hiring, or look for jobs if you're looking for work. So lots of great opportunities to be had there in both learning and sharing and making a living doing what we do. So again, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. Let's get to our guest today for this wonderful Monday morning to kick off the week, or afternoon if you're on the other side of the globe. Dan, how are you?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Good to be here.
Thanks for taking some time and joining us. I know, what is it, about 4 o'clock where you are?
It's 5 o'clock here, so I'm in the Netherlands. We have an office here over here in Amsterdam.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Amsterdam. I love Amsterdam. Only been there a couple times, and I was there on business, so I didn't get to enjoy it too much. But the few hours we did get to spend roaming around was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a fun city. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely a good time. So first of all, boy, we had a late start getting into the green room this morning, so I didn't get a chance to ask you, how do you pronounce your last name?
Assen. I think already the Daan is difficult, so it's the abbreviation of Daniel in the Netherlands.
Okay. So two A's instead of one A.
Yeah, that's like crazy. So it's Daan.
DaanAssen.
Yes.
Okay. I'll try to get that right with my my best. What kind of accent would we call that? A Norwegian accent or a Netherlandish accent?
Well, this is Dutch or Netherlands accent.
Dutch, yeah, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, she's dropping it in there going, Brent, you are so stupid. Thanks for the help, chat room. Appreciate that. Don't make yourself look stupid, Brent. Well, that's something I just do every day. Well, hey, you know what? We're going to talk about a lot of cool things. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about who you are and maybe give us a quick introduction to your company.
Yeah, so name DaanAssen, born Daniel. So you can always take the Daniel shortcut if that's easier for you. Born and raised in the Netherlands, and professionally I started my career in learning and development at university, where I studied educational science and technology. Here at the University of Twente, where there's quite a big group that is specialized in technology applications for learning and development. Started my professional career after that, after an assignment I did with Oracle, a technology company you might have heard of. I started in the I started off in the field of knowledge management, and well, that's quite logical when you come from the database side of things. So knowledge management in around 2000, then started to work for internet technology companies in 2000. So with the first boom of e-learning. So did a lot of work there, building new companies, new concepts for learning and development. Set up sort of the digital side of a lot of academies, both on learning management systems as on the content side. And then in 2007, I decided to really focus on developing new products. So developed technology startups in, well, many areas, but also sort of in the field of learning and development with a company called UCourse, a social learning platform. And the most recent one being Swipe Guide. So that's the company that I founded together with Willemijn Schneider in 2016. Yeah, so that's sort of a brief history of my career.
That's awesome. I love it, boy. And there's lots of directions we can go with that. And I'm curious to know your thoughts. And maybe we can hold off on this part till later, but the whole knowledge management thing, I've been curious. Somebody actually asked in our chat group a few weeks ago, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was somebody in the chat today. What we thought about knowledge management. I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I hadn't even heard the term in so many years. I was like, wow, yeah. People are still talking about knowledge management. That's interesting. Or, KM. I remember when it was a really hot topic back in the day, right? And there was conferences all around just knowledge management, and there was software built just knowledge management software. And now it's kind of disappeared, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think every era has its own buzzwords. And I think back then when I started my career, it was knowledge management. And now I think the sort of the concept is still relevant, but you hardly come across the term anymore now.
Yeah. It's almost like it's just baked into what we do every day. Since everything's gone digital, it was, I think when everything first went digital, it seemed like, oh yeah, let's use this stuff to like manage the knowledge and collect all this stuff and call it knowledge management. But then once it sort of just became ubiquitous and everything was digital, I think maybe it just seemed weird to give it a special name, and it just became how you did business. I wonder, or did it just roll into e-learning and L&D or training?
Yeah, well, when I look at my career, I shifted from knowledge management to e-learning, to, well, social learning, talent management, whatever era you're in, you have these words. I think we're now more in the era of micro-learning, social learning, mobile learning. It doesn't matter. I think it's all about knowledge. I think we concluded the knowledge management era by concluding that the knowledge is not something you can manage. Or at least not store in a database. So that was the quite realistic way of looking at the whole knowledge management era that we had back then.
Yeah, everybody started taking a look at it a little bit more closely and thinking, maybe that's not something we should be talking about. So
yeah.
Well, that's an excellent way to look at it. So what made you decide to start Swipe Guide?
Well, the actual start was quite interesting. I think I already had my mind around mobile technologies and using them for learning or instruction for quite some time. I saw a trend with, of course, mobile technology picking up very quickly, bandwidth becoming more or less an issue, so you could do more exciting things, developments in data analytics. So I saw some trends coming together. And that lead to sort of thinking about Swipe Guide. But it really sort of started off when I was in a plane. So we did coaching on a startup weekend. So that's a 45-hour weekend where you build innovative products. I was coaching that. So it's based upon lean startup, so to say. And back in the plane, we were looking at the sort of these flight safety cards that you have in the plane. And we thought, well, it's quite silly that you still have paper-based instruction with like in the plane with products. And it's all paper still in an area where you want to be digital in most cases, bringing in a much better experience and much clearer sort of instructions. So I was with two software developers. We had a stopover at an airport in Germany, Munich, and we had 2 hours. So they started coding a prototype. So I told them a bit about how I wanted instruction to look on mobile. I started, because I have no technical skills whatsoever, I started looking for a name. I briefed them on the idea, and then they started coding. And in the next week, we decided to spend a bit more money, develop a prototype. Then we entered an accelerator program. So 3 months really focused on sort of validating the problem, validating the concept, talking to a lot of potential customers, designing the first prototype. And yeah, that's briefly how it took off from trends that I saw, first idea, building a prototype, and so on.
Man, that's awesome to be able to take action so fast like that on an idea, to take it from just seeing the idea, having some time to kill, and luckily hanging out with smart coders. I'm assuming that we're able to put that together really fast for you.
Absolutely. That helps. Coders and designers are very needed in these situations where you want to take an idea to something concrete. Yeah.
Right. So the tip of the day there is, whenever you're flying, always bring your friendly neighborhood coder with you in case you have an idea, so they can just whip it up for you really fast.
It is helpful. I would always take a coder with me in case you come up with new ideas. Yeah.
It's the best way to go. So when did that all happen? Like when did you kick off Swipe Guide?
I think officially we kicked off 2015 with that first prototype. And in 2016, we actually founded the company, had real sort of live clients with the first product, validated the product. So the customers actually sort of helped us build it according to their needs. The team was established back then. We got funding, external funding to build the company. So that's 2016 is where it all kicked off for me and my co-founder Willemijn.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? We'll get back to it. I normally like to do like the real product stuff, and I'll jump to your website like at the second half of our conversation. But let's go back a little bit and just talk about some of your instructional design experiences, maybe even back in the early days, if you want to, and just kind of look at some of those trends a little bit and talk about how you've seen some of the industry change. As you've come along and gotten to this point.
Yeah, I think it's been quite impressive. I think when I started and entered the e-learning field in around 2000, it was like we'll have 3 years and then e-learning will take over everything. And obviously we see that it took a bit more time. So the first era, we saw virtual classrooms. We saw these electronic page turners with traditional content that you would just go over, and you'll have your 10 multiple choice questions at the end. And sort of that was our first experience. So I think it was based upon the experience and the training we had as instructional designers, the most logical first step into using digital environments to sort of convey knowledge and learning. I think from there it became more interesting. We had the era of still producing a lot of content, which sort of the effectiveness was quite questionable, putting stuff in learning management systems, trying to prove compliance, to a situation now, I think, where the whole field has matured. We've seen that sort of the stuff that we thought initially that could work in digital doesn't work. And there has been a massive change. Still on the content side, of course, a lot of content production that is there for consumption. But with sort of a smarter surrounding, using more like data to personalize stuff, making knowledge in smaller compartments that are easier to serve on different devices. So I think there has been a massive development in the field.
When you were, so you say that you don't have any technical skills at all. Back in those early days, did you just do pure instructional design, or did you author some of those sort of flip turning courses? I mean, I think all of us created those back then. I used Toolbook and Authorware way back in the day.
Yeah. I did some of the work in tools like that as well. And of course, they were already limiting what you could do. So I think as an instructional designer, you're quite stuck in the templates that you get. And I think sort of the whole philosophy behind the tools was electronic page turning and then maybe a questionnaire if you were lucky. But I enjoyed it. I did a lot of stuff in my studies, really building and also a bit of coding, but I wouldn't say that I'm up to that job anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I taught myself how to code in my early days of using Toolbook, and then it just went to learning HTML and all of that. But I still do a little tiny bit of it when I get a chance to. But yeah, I certainly don't have the chops that some of the newer, more tech savvy instructional designers and e-learning developers have, especially the bunch that are in our chat today. There's some folks in the chat today that can do some real magic with with code and with some of the authoring tools that are out there. So yeah, it's not. I don't know if my mind's just going too slow for it these days. I can't keep up, or maybe I just would rather not try to keep up. I don't know.
No, the field is rapidly developing, and of course, data is much more important now, and sort of algorithms behind it. So it's more like a whole new science behind sort of the platforms that you will be using. But I think still, like instructional design itself is already a specialization that is quite complex, making stuff that is actually effective and friendly to use for learners. I think there's still a huge challenge to make that happen because I still come across a lot of bad designed material.
Yeah, there's a great question that we dropped into the Q&A, and our wonderful chat room folks have been voting them up, and so I'm going to jump in and just grab one of those questions. I think this is a good spot for that. The top question, well, there's a tie, so I'll just take the one that technically lands at the top. What excites you about the new ways of on-the-job learning and training in manufacturing, maintenance, and field service?
Okay, yeah, that's absolutely a great question. What excites me is I think the impact that you can make in that field by a combination of the hardware technologies, data, and instructional design. So what we see in cases now that we can put Swipe Guide as a platform in the hands of operators and team leaders. They can, with their mobile devices, really rapidly create guides that sort of describe their work processes, validate them, push them out. We can communicate with machines that have data on when they need maintenance. They can then trigger the right instruction to do a maintenance procedure. You can provide the information for changeover procedures, for instance, through QR codes on a machine that are easy to scan. Mobile devices then can give you the relevant information. So, for instance, if you scan the QR code, your tablet is on Spanish, we automatically can detect the Spanish language, serve the content in your relevant language about a changeover procedure, and then we see that the business impact is not only developing knowledge with the workers on the shop floor, but also really, and then maybe it's even more like in the performance support domain, making the work more efficient. Like we see cases where changeovers go down from 5 hours to 2 hours by using effective, proper, and good instructions in Swipe Guide on mobile devices. So it's quite good to see the impact that you can make there.
Yeah, is it so do you guys use video in in the tool at all, or is it strictly text based? Or
it can be video. Like what we say is the concepts behind Swipe Guide are mainly derived from instructional design theories.
Oh, good.
So we use minimalist instruction. Maybe John Carroll rings a bell. That's the researcher in that field that did a lot of work. Yep. We have Malcolm Knowles, like adult education principles. So we try to embrace these principles, build them into the product, and I think that helps us to create more and more effective instructions. Yeah.
Yeah. What can you share with us? Any case studies of particular? You don't have to name companies or anything like that, but just how it's being used.
Yeah, I can sort of paint the picture of a use case that we're having. So that's a global rollout that we have been working on for over a year now. That's with Heineken. You probably know the brand, so it's in the food and beverage market. They use Swipe Guide for their breweries and all the instructions in the workplace. And how that works is that together with team leaders and the TPMs, people in the breweries create the work instructions, so the standards of work. Going back to the video question you raised, it can be short videos that people are shooting, but we prefer to have photos or animated GIFs because then people can swipe through the guides at their own pace. Like if you have say 2-minute video, it has a lock-in effect, so it determines the pace. And not everybody picks it up at the same pace, and procedures are step by step anyway. So then swiping through photos works better, is our experience. And if you have small movements, an animated GIF with stitching 3 or 4 photos together already works better, is our experience, than videos. But still, you can use it in the tool.
It seems like that would be a lot easier on bandwidth too, right? It'd be a lot easier and faster, you don't have to worry about streaming video and all the codecs and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Of course, we're already, like in many cases, you can guarantee that you will have the bandwidth for video. Sometimes you need to take some precautions, but in many cases we can. But like with Heineken, we're in Africa, in Asia, we're in some really remote locations. So there it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We have a technology of making an internet connection available in remote locations, but we're also working on an offline capability. But still, with images, it's easier not only for the user but also on the bandwidth. I fully agree. Yeah.
Wow, that's Are you you wouldn't happen to be working with Appeteer, those guys, and Learn Appeal? Ring a bell at all?
No, it doesn't ring a bell. No.
Wes Atkinson, yeah, they Learn Appeal is a nonprofit, but and Wes at Appeteer, thanks for dropping that in, Joe. They created a little box that's like a whole built-in LMS, everything with cell phone or Wi-Fi built into it, and they did it for schools. You can just you can just drop it into a room in Africa that doesn't have any sort of connectivity or anything, but everybody still has devices, and so when the kids walk into the classroom, it'll automatically connect to that, and then they're able to get content on their mobile devices that it's just kind of streamed out from this little box. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but we work with WeStream. That's a device that also brings internet connections in these remote locations, but that's purely a internet connection device.
Yeah.
And in our case, I think most use cases, people use Swipe Guide on smartphones, tablets, and we're now working on some of the wearables, like the smart glasses that allow you to be hands-free in your instructions. Of course, you have a lot of cases where that's very helpful.
Yeah, you know what? I was just thinking that actually too. So I wonder, are you playing with how the swipe would work? Like if somebody's wearing the glasses,
Yeah.
like how would they swipe with their glasses? Maybe just a hand gesture, just to like do that. Would it read it or what?
Well, we're exploring multiple scenarios. Like de facto, the devices have navigation, of course. So one of the devices we work with is Vuzix, and that has a swipe navigation
built into the side there.
Built into the side. And we work with RealWear, and that is voice controlled. So you can just say zoom in, zoom out, and left, right. And you can even look up and down. So there's a lot of navigation out of the box already.
Yeah.
But I think it works. And in cases where you want to have people in a hands-free situation, these technologies are becoming more and more mature and comfortable to use, even if you have to wear them for a couple of hours.
Yeah, I ran into the Vuzix company at CES a couple years ago, and they had they were in a one area with a bunch of different vendors, and then a bunch of the integrators and the people that were like building actual solutions. And a lot of the solutions were around industrial type work and guides and just displaying text and training and educational, informational communications, things like that. And it was, it was surprising to me because I'd heard that, we're still years away from doing this and whatnot. And then I walk in and I'm like, it looks like they're doing it today.
Well, yeah, they're doing it today. But we were at CES this year and explored a lot of these technologies, and they're developing. But when you put one of these devices actually on the head of an operator, it's still not there. Like from the user experience, it's not. If you have a HoloLens or a Vuzix or RealWear, I think the technology needs a bit more development to really make it as user friendly as you would like to see it.
Yeah, everything's got to get a little smaller yet, and I think if it was just as easy as putting on a pair of sunglasses and that was it, then I think that would be pretty cool. We're getting there, I guess, but
yeah, it's developing very rapidly. And also with gesture, we have these gloves where you can just, like in the air, swipe, and the gesture is picked up by the software, and you can swipe through the guides that we have available in the platform.
Yeah, it'd be cool. Well, it's cool to hear that you're working on that kind of stuff too, because it just makes perfect sense that that's where it's all going. And
I think there's an enormous development on the device side, and then of course on the data side as well, using the data and the feedback you get from people to not only make the instructions better, but also look at, okay, what does this tell us about the process that we're describing here? Is there room for improvement, either from direct feedback that we're getting or from data analytics in the Swipe Guide platform?
Oh, that's awesome. So you're impacting, you're not just training people and iterating just the training, but you're also iterating the business processes and trying to get more efficient and learning from the business now is learning from the training application basically, and learning what they should be doing better and how they can change things and sort of streamlining that. That's exactly the kind of stuff we talk about here all the time, at how much in the future, as we move forward, how training and learning and development is going to play a bigger role in impacting the business. And we're just, in some cases, we're just really not too sure what that looks like yet. But, it's very, very clear in a situation like what you're talking about, how much the business can be impacted from that data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think through the instructions, we learn a lot about products and processes where there is room for improvement, and that's absolutely great value, I think.
Yeah, I think it's funny because when I think back on my career as an instructional designer, I remember that being the most frustrating thing for me, being in a business and them saying, okay, we need some training on this process or this new software. And you're like, okay, so somebody show me the processes. And you go to the person that's supposed to have created the processes, and they either don't have them done, or they're not recorded, or they're not really sure. So then you go to the real people who are actually doing the job. And you basically, as the person needing to develop the training, are now actually also documenting and asking questions about the whole business process. And I remember just thinking to myself, this isn't my job. Somebody else was supposed to have done this, and then I'm supposed to just make the training on it. and then, and now it's like I feel like I'm doing two people's jobs. But yeah, Ruby gets it.
Well, you better have the people that are close to the process and to the work create the content. At least that's our philosophy. And then, as an instructional designer, you can review and then basically look at data and see where there's room for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let me take 2 minutes, and then when we come back, I'm going to share your website, and we'll talk a little bit more about the product before we move into wrap up, and we can talk more specifics about that. But just give me 1 second while I share my screen one more time and break for a quick commercial break, if you will. It's not really a commercial break, folks. It's just me saying, hey, click that share button up there at the top and share this Crowdcast with your network, your colleagues, your peers, and say, hey, Brent's got a great guest on today. You should be here. And shoot that off to your Twitter network or your LinkedIn folks. And if you forget and you have to do it later, that's okay too. Just say, hey, you know what? There's an archived recording of this great conversation that Brent had today on TLDcast. And he was introduced to this cool new tool called Swipe Guide, and you should totally check it out. So definitely reach out to your networks and your colleagues and just let them know how you spent this hour. And also reach back to me and let me know what it is you got out of today's session, what you get out of TLDcast in general. We're always looking for feedback, and we love to hear from our community and to continue to have conversations with you all. One more thing before we jump back into the conversation. We're going to have a meetup in Phoenix on Wednesday. Super excited about that. I do not see Laura Sanchez in the chat today. Maybe she's just listening in and hasn't been too chatty, but she's been so kind to organize just a coffee meetup, super informal. Just we realize that there's a lot of instructional designers that have gotten connected and met via TLDC, and of course TLDC 19 that just happened at the end of January. And so we just thought about, we should do a meetup, and as many people in Phoenix that can get together and just hang out and have a cup of coffee and talk face to face, we should do that. And so Laura picked up the ball and said, I'll take care of it and organize it, and we'll make that happen. And so this Wednesday will be our first super informal coffee meetup in Phoenix. If any of you in the chat are in the Phoenix area and have not heard about it yet, the best place to go find out is in the Slack group. You can find out all about that meetup, and anybody else that is out for coffee in some other city somewhere and they decide, hey, you know what? I should meet up with my colleagues and peers. Just let us know, and we'll help you just sort of put a name on it. We're calling it this one on Wednesday, TLDC-PHX. And I got that from Kara North, who mentioned that when she worked at Amazon, all of their buildings were named after the airport codes. And so I thought, that's kind of a cool way to do it. So I don't know, what's the airport code in Amsterdam, Don?
It probably is AMS.
So if you were to have a meetup and just having some coffee, wanting to hang out with some folks who like to hang out at TLDC, it would just be TLDC-AMS. Perfect, Dominica. Thank you. Yeah. So,
very good.
So we were, we just thought that'd be a cool idea. So if you guys want to put together an informal sort of meetup. Just let us know that you're doing it so we can help you get connected with other folks in your area, and we can just kind of see how that goes. It's all just a big experiment, so we'll see how Phoenix works, and I'm sure it's going to work out great because, hey, how hard can it be just showing up at a coffee shop and hanging out together, right? So we're going to do that on Wednesday here in Phoenix, and then we'll report back and let you all know. Thankfully, we'll be meeting just after TLD Cast Wednesday morning, so everybody will have a chance to get to the coffee shop. So it'll be really a late morning coffee, but anyways, it's going to be a good time. So, and we won't be live streaming it because we'll be having too much fun just hanging out together. So it'll be a good time. Anyways, with that, I will also just give one last final announcement, and that is on Wednesday of next week. We have the Women in L&D. March 6th is going to be our wild episode, which is going to be tons of fun. And we also have our playlist, which I think you just saw go by on the screen up above. I think I can bring that back. We have the storyboarding playlist coming up Thursday on 28th. That's this Thursday. We'll be hanging out for 3 hours of storyboarding goodness. If you want to learn how to storyboard and hang out with us for a playlist is basically 3 TLD casts back to back. So it's a long morning. So schedule out a conference room in your offices and hang out with a bunch of friends. Bring some donuts and coffee, and just focus on one particular element of instructional design. And this month, our playlist is storyboarding. So you guys will all have a great time doing that. All right, that is enough announcements for this morning. And let me jump back in, change my screen really fast. I think we should go full screen here for a minute or two just to show everybody a little bit about Swipe Guide. And Don, I'll let you kind of guide me through here to show me a little bit about what else Swipe Guide can do.
Yeah, so a very quick and brief intro. Swipe Guide is a cloud-based platform that allows you to very easily create visual step-by-step instructions based upon templates that we validated through research with the University of Twente. So they're minimalist and visual. So as you as instructional designers all know, visual information is much easier processed by the brain than text. And still we see in a lot of cases that instructions are text-based. So we take them to a different level with visuals like photos, illustrations, animated GIFs, videos that people can easily shoot with their smartphone or a tablet, put them in the Swipe Guide templates and then push them out. Of course, then getting people to the right content is one of the most important challenges. So that's where we, for instance, use the QR codes or intelligent ways of linking people to content that sort of is the content that they need at their sort of specific use case. So within Heineken, it can be either starting up a machine or a changeover procedure or maintenance or cleaning. And the good thing with the platform is that it's not only creation, but it's also knowledge sharing. So we see, for instance, in the case with Heineken, that breweries in Belgium create standards of work, share them with brewery in Singapore, for instance. They both work on the same machines and then can together work on best practices for operating machines. So we try to use instruction as a means for continuous improvement and also for learning about how you can improve your operations in that sense. And we have from the Heineken use case quite some interesting experiences. But also we have cases with field service engineers where people that take care of machinery or equipment just, for instance, use it for troubleshooting. So if, for instance, we have an electronics company that sells drives, electronic drives, for ships, mines, and other equipment. And if there is a an issue with a device, it automatically triggers an error code that points to an instruction that helps people to troubleshoot with a swipe guide that they can immediately open on their device of preference, being either desktop, smartphone, tablet, wearable, whatever. What you see here is instruction tracking. So we have a quite comprehensive instruction tracking here, where we look at both sort of the qualitative feedback that people give us, maybe on a step that is not logical or not clear enough. They can do ratings on guides, but also we look at data and behavior and what that can tell us about how your, in fact, knowledge or your instructions are being used. And there you have cases where this behavior in the app tells us about, is it clear enough? So we see sometimes that people linger on steps, or they open the information app mapping icons that we have in the software to solve an error, for instance, and that points us to the fact that there might be a potential critical incident in a procedure, or there might be a point where your instructions are not clear enough. And what we also do there is content analysis. So we try to analyze content based upon the evidence-based instruction principles to see if it is well developed. Like minimalist principle, for instance, is you have to write actively, and that's the stuff that we then can check in the software. Like, okay, does this make sense, or is this a combination maybe of two steps that you need to split out, or is the visual not clear enough, or whatever? So analytics is quite a big thing behind the platform. Yeah,
it's very, very cool. We got tons of questions, but one just silly one off the top of my head. You mentioned animated GIFs, and there was in that one demo screen on the first page, or this one right here. Are you able to create those GIFs right within the tool, or do you have people create them outside of it in a different tool and then they have to import it?
Currently, we have an external tool, and then you can import them. But we're developing it as part of the media editor that we have in Swipe Guide, so that it's a bit more easy and seamless to create these.
Yeah, that would be really, really cool. All right. So, thank you, Craig, for pointing out that there are still a few questions in here to be answered. I think we've covered most of them. I just haven't clicked the button. But let me just grab a couple here. Oh, here's an interesting one about accessibility. How do you address accessibility?
Accessibility in people getting access to the content.
Like 508 compliance and stuff like that. Or do you not worry too much about that? So I know a lot of the content we create has to be what's a word other than accessible, chat folks, that I could use? It's not 508 compliance in the US. That's the code for it. But it's like user friendly. Yeah. Reader friendly. Thanks, Ruby.
Okay. Yeah. In that sense. Yeah. What we do two things. One is we do a lot of user testing. So we observe users in lab situations where we really focus on the UX, UI, all the aspects from navigation to text, image usage, additional information and functionality that we provide. For the rest, of course, there is a lot standard in the device in settings. So if you have the smartphone or tablet, you can do a lot of settings on there regarding accessibility, and we just follow that. So if you adjust things there, if you have visual disabilities, we just pick that up, and the software sort of behaves based upon your settings there.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The operating systems have gotten so much better at handling a lot of that heavy lifting for you when it comes to that. But I think as designers, I think we do need to pay, more attention to that type of user design than I think we've worried about in the past. So, but I would think with something like what you've got here, with very text-based and image-based, that in and of itself makes it a lot easier to be compliant in that accessibility and the disability area, I think, than most tools.
Yeah, we haven't encountered any issues there so far. And as you state, I think that the quality of the operating systems, both on iOS and Android, really help a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Kim wants to know, she says, it sounds like a lot of Swipe Guides content could be contributed by technical writers, not just instructional designers. Do you have tech writers on staff?
No, we just focus on software. So actually, within Swipe Guide, I'm one of the people with the instruction background, really focusing on product development. But we don't create content. That's all up to clients. Where we see different use cases, like we see cases with. Like if you look at traditional manuals that come with products, then we see that in many cases technical writers are involved. Yeah. When we look at situations where you have work instructions and where the work instructions are used for training on the job as well, then we see instructional designers being involved, but still there is also a lot of involvement of people that really describe the processes. So people from like lean manufacturing or TPM. So it's in many cases it's a combination of.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see more and more departments bringing technical writers, instructional designers, and really anybody that creates any sort of content coming together into teams now in companies. I don't know if you or your sales folks have seen that, but the more and more I reach out with different companies and meet with different people and learn about their structure of how their organization works, the more I either see it where there's both technical writers and instructional designers on the same team,
yeah,
or I hear people talking about it a lot more about, yeah, we're going to do a reorg and we're going to bring all these content creators together so that they can learn and share together and be a little bit more efficient and not have so much duplication of effort.
Yeah, but we see that, and there's various scenarios. So what I like best is the really the involvement of the shop floor, because when people, what we see is when you implement Swipe Guide and we have people on the shop floor that feel a sense of ownership over the content, it's really much more lively. They are willing to maintain it. They're giving feedback. They're seeing in the images and videos, they see their peers. They see the equipment that they actually work with. So that's a lot of motivation to really contribute. That is critical. So I see the role of technical writers and instructional designers change there from really like creating all the content to reviewing, doing workshops with the people, pointing them out like, okay, this is how you create effective stuff. We don't create it for you, but we sort of give you the tips. We help you to create your own material in a platform like this.
Improve on it. Yeah, you know, it's so cool to hear you say that, because I can remember thinking a few years back when the internet first started to change, and I remember telling people that are in presentations and stuff that our role is going to change, because since everybody can create content, our role is going to be more to guide and to iterate and to improve upon the content that's being user generated. And I remember being questioned heavily, let me put it that way, at the end of my presentations when I would mention that. There's no way that anybody and everybody out there could be creating the content that we create and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of...
Yeah, well, it is the case. And I must say, not all the content looks good. So there's definitely a role for either the platform having more intelligence and giving recommendations, or for instructional designers to help out. But if you see the energy, like with the company in Heineken, and how quick they create and document their knowledge, that's massive. That's nothing an instructional or training department could do, not even from the initial development, but especially not from maintaining it like in a rapidly changing environment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I keep wishing Toddy was here. She's a member of our community, and she works for a brewery here in the U.S. She would be interested in hearing more about that case study. But I'm sure she'll go back and listen to the archive.
Yeah, she can always reach out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, we're getting close to the top of the hour, but there's one last question that Jonathan wanted me to ask. He says, how do you handle compliance training for regulated industries? And Jonathan, maybe I'm going to ask you to be a little bit more specific around that. Like, what specifically do you mean by regulated industries? I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, I think that's almost every industry nowadays, but
they're all regulated. So
yeah, it's the auditing. Yeah, what we see is that, of course, a lot of companies already have procedures in place that sort of are used for auditing to pass the different compliance regulations that they're facing. The issue that they're facing now in many cases is that these documents are stored in like a SharePoint or a quality management systems like SOPs, and they're every year or every 2 years they're reviewed. But when you look at the documents and what actually has sort of is done on the shop floor, there is a deviation that is quite risky, and that's where we try to bridge the gap to describe the procedures in a better understandable way. And when you look at compliance, then of course Swipe Guide itself becomes subject to compliance. Yeah. So what we do is we are building at the moment more versioning functionality to be able to prove like, okay, these standards have been updated on a regular basis. And of course, we do more and more tracking behind the platform to prove that there is compliance with sort of the standards that people are being audited on. So that is, that's more or less the directions that we see there.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And J-Rock, as you were mentioning, and I read your chat on FDA audits, I had this horrible nightmare flashback to my ISO 9000 days where we were trying to go through ISO 9000 certification in a manufacturing facility I was working in. And what a nightmare that was. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, we've seen cases where people pick up a procedure, then create a swipe guide, and then if you have the swipe guide and the procedure, you see that the actual way to do stuff is different from the procedure that's somewhere stored in a document management system.
Yeah, just crazy. Well, hey, let's get right to the good stuff and let people know where they can find you and connect with you if they want to talk more, or if they want to connect with Swipe Guide or anybody from your offices there. It sounds like the whole office is watching, so everybody wave to everybody virtual wave in the chat to the Swipe Guide office crew listening in today. Where do you have a LinkedIn? Maybe is that a good place for people to reach out to you, or maybe just?
Well, you see in the chat already swipeguide.com. That's the place where you find information about the product and specific features and background info. And people can always reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'll quickly put my email here as well. So in case there are any questions or people want more information, the website is I think a good source, but feel free to reach out to me anytime if you want to have more info.
Yeah, this has been fantastic, Daan. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and sharing a little bit about your life, your experiences, and what you're doing at Swipe Guide. It's awesome.
Yeah, and it's great being with an interested and group like the community that you have here today. So thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And if you have any like really exciting new releases or anything coming up, let us know and let us be a part of it, and we can help out.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can share some use cases in the future. We will have an ebook coming out, so there's some interesting stuff that might be good for your community as well. Yeah,
that would be fantastic. All right, Daan, thank you so much. It was great to meet you. And I'm going to close out your video and we'll end the show.
Yeah, thank you.
All righty, take care. All right, everybody, that's our show for today, TLDcast Monday. Man, you learn a lot of stuff when you hang out with us for an hour, right? Thanks a lot, Daan, for hanging out with us and sharing Swipecast with us today, or Swipe Guide, sorry. Wow, Swipecast. It's an interesting concept, but well, we could talk about that offline. But swipeguide.com, and boy, anybody else still talking about knowledge management? That was a blast from the past too. So tons of fun. You guys are all great. Thanks for hanging out with us in the chat. Great questions too, by the way. Thanks for helping walk me through that and sharing everything that you guys know. Don't forget to hang out with us tomorrow morning. We're going to have a great conversation on leadership and leadership development on Seeds of Insight with the folks at People Firm. So I'm really, really looking forward to tomorrow's guest, and it's going to be a good one. So lots of great fun stuff coming up. You guys are awesome. Get out there today and train somebody, and don't forget to learn something new. Aha.